Right. So there's an ongoing case in the US with respect to whether someone called Mahmoud Khalil is going to be deported or not. And there are several interesting stuff about the issue. Trump has said that it's going to be one among many deportations of pro-Hamas people that are going to happen. And the people who are against his deportation are trying to say that it is basically unconstitutional and that there are no provisions by the Constitution that allow someone like the Minister of Foreign Affairs to have such power as to completely deport someone from
I don't
the
know
country.
anything about this case. I'm only just hearing about it for the first time today, so I rely on you to be able to give me all the information I need to
I will give you all the information I need, but first things first. Islander 3. It's a third issue, and I think people are really happy about it. It has already been a sensation. Everyone says the best things. Harry, I think you really like it. Yeah? Right. And you can buy it for $14.99, not even £15. Yeah?
You get 1 penny. You get
Exactly.
1 penny off £15. That's how generous and loving we are.
Look at all the wonderful aesthetic here. Yes, right. So back to our topic. So last Saturday, there was someone called Mahmoud Khalil who was arrested in his home. Pardon me, let's go here. Right, so he was arrested in his university-owned home by ICE. And he was taken to custody in Louisiana. He was the lead student negotiator for the pro-Palestine encampment at Columbia last year, and also at the New York City College in, I think, last April. And he's associated with violent assaults and disruptions, and he is considered to be someone who is an activist by the left, but also someone who is a pro-terrorist by the right. Right, so let's come here and see what's going on. We have here pro-Palestinian Columbia graduate apprehended by ICE after leading on-campus protests. We have basically the information I gave you. And what I wanted to share with you by this article is this point here. So Amy Greer, Khalil's attorney, said she was told by a DHS agent over the phone that his team had executed a State Department order to revoke Khalil's student visa. And the agent also said they were revoking his green card. So he is a Palestinian born in Syria. He grew up in Syria and he went to the US to study. And I think he is studying for a master's in law, if I'm not mistaken. And he is very heavily involved into the protests. Reports say that he went to the US in 2022. He got married to a U.S. citizen. She's pregnant with an 8-month kid.
So he's got a green card then?
He's got a green card and a student visa. And according to these reports, the State Department is revoking both of them. Right. So what's going on here?
So they're revoking them purely for his involvement in pro-Palestinian activities on campus, or is there more to it?
Okay, so I'll show you how it's presented by both sides. So the left says it's an issue of free speech. He has the right of free speech. He is pro-Palestine, and he is an activist, and he is essentially helping people to, just stop being bigoted and become aware of the Palestinian plight and cause. And he shouldn't get deported because there are no constitutional provisions for him to get deported. Number one, that's the institutional argument. And also presumably they agree with it on a moral basis. So let's say morally speaking, he is on the right side of history. So he shouldn't get deported. So
my favorite argument.
Moral and institutional, that's the way the left is presenting him. Now, people from the right, or people who are non-leftists, basically, they are presenting him not as necessarily pro-Palestinian, but as pro-Hamas.
They're presenting him as a subversive terrorist sympathizer.
Exactly. So they're saying essentially that there is plenty of evidence to show that he isn't just someone who is talking about the plight of Palestinians and the collateral damage in Israel's war effort in the conflict in Gaza, but he is someone who is actively cheering for Hamas. That's how they're presenting him. And they are appealing to what is called the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, that has a particular provision that says any alien whose presence or activities in the U.S. the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S. is deportable. And they're saying that right now the United States has a foreign policy of combating anti-Semitism around the world. And they are essentially saying that his presence in the U.S. would undermine the objective and would undermine the spirit of U.S. foreign policy and its ties to Israel.
Yeah, it's. I must say, whenever anything like this comes up with the United States, basically allowing special carve-outs for its foreign policy of combating anti-Semitism around the world, it makes me frustrated that, okay, if you can do that, if you can refer back to the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act to find a reason to be able to deport this man, can you not do the same for instance, anti-white hatred, anti-white rhetoric, anti-white behavior that happens, and actions where people are killed in their own countries, where they're being displaced, where they're being swapped in their own countries, perhaps within the United States itself. The United States is a country built by Europeans, primarily, if you go back to the words of the Founding Fathers, for European people. Why does the special carve-out have to be purely for them and not us? Why can you not take people who may have had dubious legality from the BLM protests and the riots in 2020? Can you not use these same kinds of provisions to declare BLM its own kind of terrorist organization and then deport people who shouldn't have been in the country who were supporting them?
Right. So I think there are
that's my own personal gripes with
there are two positions to put here. Number one is that this is a deportation case, and in a lot of cases where we're talking about movements such as the BLM movement, we could be talking about people who are native to the U.S.
Of course, but I do not doubt that many illegal immigrants were probably included in those BLM riots.
You're correct on this, and I don't want to evade what you said before. I agree with the following. I think that it isn't just anti-Semitism that the U.S. state should, for instance, try combat, and obviously the question is how does it combat it? But people from let's say from the U.S. society, but also the government, should take issue with anti-Whiteism as well.
I mean, where's
with all sorts of anti-Westernism, with all these narratives that are intended to completely destabilize society.
I mean, Donald
create
Trump,
anarchy, chaos, and demoralization.
Donald Trump, in fairness, has taken some actions against South Africa recently, following their explicitly anti-white policies that they were putting forwards. But where is this kind of behavior directed towards people within the US who are entirely supportive of the actions of the South African government? Where's the American... where has been the American overwhelming support for a community like Irania in South Africa, for instance, who are just barely surviving and just want to be left alone, whereas the rest of the country and much of the international community wants them dead?
Well, I mean, sadly there seems to not be the amount of solidarity you'd expect there to be in certain communities, and because, for instance, you can see that entirely in the left. The left is constantly disrupting a number of identities. And every time someone says that there should be solidarity between communities and people who share a particular identity, they constantly get branded and cancelled or become the target of an assault, character assassination.
To be fair, with Trump in charge...
Honestly, I respect people who stand up for themselves.
Yeah, there has been a somewhat shift in policy, at least regarding South Africa with Trump. Yeah. At the very least, he's not wanting them to be able to abuse the white population quite as easily as they want to.
Right. So here there is a judge that blocks the deportation of Khalil, and what is interesting to say here is that who appointed him? Harry, who would you expect him?
Who appointed this judge?
The judge.
I couldn't tell you. Oh,
Right.
does it say? Oh, wait, no, it says.
Well, we'll get there. We'll
it
get
says
there.
Obama.
Yeah.
It says Obama.
Federal Judge Jesse Furman from the Southern District of New York poured cold water on Trump's plan on Monday. Furman blocked the administration from deporting Khalil until at least the next court hearing on Sunday. And they're saying that this judge was appointed by President Obama in 2012.
Brilliant.
Right. So here we have several. There are all sorts of footage about Khalil on X. Here we have some, and I will say some of them is fake, and some of them are just they just say it's him where it isn't. So, for instance, there are several videos where they're talking about demonstration in Canada and also in New York, where they have they say this is Khalil who is actively calling for.
And they're just misrepresenting videos.
If you see who is speaking, it's not him.
Yeah.
And you can definitely see this because this is him here, and the people that are involved in being shown in other videos have a completely different hairline.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah, he does have. He's got, what is that? Is that stage 2 Norwood?
Stage 2, stage 3.
Yeah.
It's receding a lot.
He's kind of got a Vegeta look going.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is that a lot of videos are out there showing him being involved in several kind of protests. Not all of them are veridical. Not all of them are true. Right? Some of them are straightforwardly false. You can just see it. But the point is, he was known for a long time by the authorities. And I found an article here that was published in 2023, October 12, 5 days after October 7th. Right, so it says here, that's National Post it's a Canadian one. So it says, first reading, terrorist sympathizers on Parliament Hill, Canada's Palestinian extremism protest. Problem, Mahmoud Khalil, who was invited to a Parliament Hill reception just last year, pledged fealty to Hamas at a rally in Ottawa.
And that's back in 2023.
That's back in 2023, 5 days after the Hamas atrocities.
And this is confirmed to be Khalil.
Well, the point is, if you see here lots of footage, it's deleted. So they have links.
Oh, right, okay.
But they have been deleted. So here, if you open them, so they say that this is an Instagram post by Khalil himself.
Yeah.
And also pick up by the X account. But also the point is that the Instagram page isn't available and the page here doesn't exist.
Oh, right. Okay.
But what is interesting is that this hasn't been published right now where the whole thing is happening. This was published essentially 5 days after the atrocities of October 7th in 2023. So It's not someone who was just a scapegoat. They say, okay, right, we found footage of him at the student protests. Let's just deport him to make an example out of him.
There does seem to have been from the time evidence.
There does seem to be history. And I have here several stuff from the article where it says here that the Dave is the Hamas commander credited as the mastermind of the October 7th terror attack. And against Israel, the chant was led by Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian activist who has previously been at the head of marches in Montreal, explicitly calling for Israel's end. Let me see. Yes, that's here.
Yeah, here we are. Yep.
What I read is from here. I don't want to be accused for reading things that you don't see. Right. And it says here, in April, he led a crowd in front of Montreal's Israel consulate and led a chant of "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." The slogan, which refers to the Jordan River. Yeah, we all know this. And they say that the October 7 attack, which was live stream, which resulted in the indiscriminate massacre of 1,200 Israelis, much of it live stream, was dubbed Operation Al-Aqsa Flood by Hamas. On Monday, Khalil praised the flood and pledged to ride it into the center of Jerusalem. They say his Monday ended with a call to supporter to, open quote, be the nightmare, close quote, in Canada. And as I said, we're going to be the nightmare here. We're going to be the nightmare in Gaza.
Some pretty intense rhetoric.
Yes. And we have here all these links that we can't find anything here. But if you look at the X link, I could open it and I saw a lot of people in the comments. First, it said that the owner of the account wants to limit visibility. That was a few hours ago. And if you saw underneath, the comments were all deport him. Right. So he doesn't seem to be someone who was just handpicked, who was just identified as a voice who spoke pro-Palestine in the encampment.
There's some priors to this.
Exactly. Right. So there have been several marches in solidarity for him. Right now, yesterday there was a march in New York City. We have also Puerto Rican pro-Trump supporters who are disrupting it and having and chanting "Send them back." And here we have a representative of him. I think it's his lawyer.
I'm a staff attorney with the Clear Project and one of Mahmoud Khalil's attorneys, and I will be reading a statement on behalf of Mahmoud Khalil's wife, who does not wish to be named. My husband was kidnapped from our home, and it's shameful that the United States government continues to hold him because he stood for the rights and lives of his people. I demand his immediate release and return to our family. His disappearance has...
You get an idea.
None of this should be in America in the first place. That's always the first thing that comes to my mind when I watch videos like this, is that your desert conflict does not need to be in America, and it should not be in America.
I mean, it should definitely not be in a university.
It shouldn't be.
And the universities have been politicized by the left for a long time now. I think at least.
But it's just another example of
the end of the 50s, early 60s.
Importing these mass populations into your country, you import their problems and their conflicts as well.
Yeah. But someone found some footage of her. She was in several Zoom calls, and she was essentially giving advice to people to how to not get identified as a Hamas supporter.
Well, was it, anyway. to be fair, you say that was that don't get identified as a Hamas supporter because you are a Hamas supporter, or don't get identified
because
as a Hamas supporter illegitimately?
Because you're going to get caught.
Oh, because you are a Hamas supporter, not because they're going to just falsely accuse you of it. Okay, all right.
Right, so we have here Marco Rubio, who basically says that it's not an issue of free speech, it's an issue of foreign policy, but also national security, because they are saying that they are tying him with all the activities and with action that they are considering to be harmful for the U.S. Right, so... And what do I want to say? Anyway, we have several links here. I don't want to bore you with more of this, but I think basically that there should be zero tolerance for any kind of such political activism in universities.
Well, at all of foreign conflicts.
I literally think universities are there for people to go and get educated. It's not for people to go and become activists because they want to build their CV while they're disrupting people's education.
So on this principle, you would be equally against a pro-Palestine or a pro-Israel protest because it doesn't need to be in
pro BLM, a pro anything. I don't think universities should be there for political activism.
I think that's a very fair position to take.
People who want to go and be activists, they can go and take the road and see where it takes them. But universities, I think the very disruption of universities is essentially a kind of, how should I say, a kind of subversion of a society. The universities, it's not. It's also a symbol. It isn't just an issue of imparting know-how in particular expertises for particular expertises. It's a symbol, and they want to subvert it, and they want to subvert education, and there should be zero tolerance for this. This is actively destroying societies. This is actively destroying communal sentiment, and it actually makes people to either feel ashamed for their countries if they are in the West, or entirely or not ready to defend them. And I'll just say this happens throughout the West. This kind of anti-Western propaganda has been given birth primarily from universities, and universities and schools right now are just nests of, I'd say, nests of ideological indoctrination and manipulation. I think there should be zero tolerance of this.
I agree, and it's been going on for decades as well. You can go back to things like Shelby Steele discussing in his book White Guilt, back when he was a black activist in the original civil rights movement, how the universities basically let him and his friends steamroll the place, take it over.
Exactly, and it's also an issue of habituation. If you allow this to happen, you're creating the habit for it to happen, and you're habituating people into thinking that it's always going to be that way, where it doesn't have to be that way. Societies don't have to be dysfunctional just because the left wants it.
Yeah. In the same way that I was discussing in the last segment, you can't let these people take your entire country hostage. Yes. You don't need to capitulate to their feelings, because their feelings are changeable and selective. They choose who they care about based entirely on political praxis. They do not have principles, and you do not have to be held hostage by them.
Islander issue 3 is now available to purchase from shop.lotus.com and is the next step in the story that we are telling with this magazine. For this issue, we have collected piercing and esoteric essays from the finest right-wing minds on the theme of our civilizational winter. Each of our authors is an expert in bringing forth the most important hidden revelations from the lowest reaches of the soul, and it has all been beautifully rendered in a medievalist revivalist aesthetic. For this issue, I commissioned a new translation of the ancient Anglo-Saxon poem, The Wanderer, and have written a companion essay exploring how it is a reflection of our modern experience. I personally feel that this is the most important thing I've ever written, so I will be looking forward to your feedback on it. We have resolved our distribution issues, with the magazines being printed in advance of the orders, so we can guarantee that you will receive your copy very soon after ordering it, and you will also receive emailed updates so you can see exactly where it is. Hopefully, issue 3 can provide you with the space and context to engage in deep reflection about the nature of our circumstances, to discover hidden truths about yourself, and find the resolve to make it through our spiritual exile.